It was a quiet evening in the small town of Brooksville. The sun was setting slowly, painting the sky in soft orange and pink colors. The streets were calm, only a few cars passing by. Everyone was heading home after a long day. On the corner of Maple Street, a young girl named Maya rolled her wheelchair along the sidewalk. She was 16 years old, smart, kind, and full of dreams. Maya had been born with a leg condition that made walking difficult, but she never let that stop her. Every evening she went to her therapy center, and this was her usual time to go back home. Her backpack hung on the back of her wheelchair, and her headphones played her favorite song. She looked peaceful, enjoying the cool breeze. For her, this was just another normal day. But that evening, fate had something else planned. As she turned onto an empty street near the park, a police car slowed down behind her. The sound of tires on the road made her look back. The blue and white car stopped just a few feet away. Inside, a man in a dark uniform stared at her. His name was Officer Grant, tall, serious-looking, and known for his strictness around town. Maya felt a little nervous. She hadn't done anything wrong, but the way the officer looked at her made her uncomfortable. She stopped her wheelchair and took off her headphones. The officer opened his door and stepped out. "Hey, you!" he called, walking toward her. Maya blinked, confused. "Me, sir?" she asked softly. "Yes, you," he said in a sharp voice. "What are you doing out here this late?" "It's just 6 o'clock, sir," Maya said politely. "I'm going home for my therapy session." Officer Grant looked at her suspiciously. "Therapy, huh? Mind telling me what's in that bag of yours?" Maya frowned, unsure why he was asking. "Just my books. And water bottle," she replied. The officer's eyes narrowed. "We had a report about a shoplifting earlier today. A group of teenagers took some electronics. You look about the same age." Maya's heart started to beat fast. "Sir, I didn't steal anything. I don't even go near that store." Grant crossed his arms. "We'll see about that." He stepped closer, his boots hitting the ground with a heavy sound. Maya gripped the wheels of her chair tightly. The street felt colder now. The air was heavy, like something bad was about to happen. From a nearby window, a curtain moved. Someone was watching, but they didn't come out. Grant leaned down and pointed at her bag. "Open it," he ordered. Maya's hand shook as she unzipped her bag and showed him the inside. "See, just books." He stared for a moment, then smirked. "You could be hiding something else." Maya felt tears forming in her eyes. "Sir, please." "I didn't do anything." The officer sighed loudly, clearly annoyed. "You people always have excuses," he said under his breath. That sentence hit Maya hard. She looked down, trying not to cry. She had faced rude people before, but this felt different. It wasn't just rude. It was cruel. Grant walked around her chair slowly, looking at her from all sides, like she was some kind of suspect. The flashing police light on top of his car blinked faintly, making the shadows dance on the street. Maya wanted to call her father, but her phone was deep in her bag. She was too scared to move. "Why are you out here alone?" the officer asked again. "I told you," Maya whispered. "I'm going home." He didn't seem to care. "You live around here?" "Yes, just 3 blocks away." He took another step closer, now towering over her. His tone grew harsher. "You know, you shouldn't talk back to an officer." Maya looked up at him, her voice trembling. "I'm not, sir. I'm just telling the truth." For a long moment there was silence. Only the distant hum of cars could be heard. Grant stared down at her, his face unreadable. Then suddenly he grabbed her backpack off the wheelchair roughly. "Hey, that's mine," Maya cried out. He ignored her and opened the bag, shaking it. Her books and phone charger fell onto the ground. He looked through everything but found nothing. Finally, he dropped the bag back and muttered, "Fine, you can go. But next time, don't act suspicious." He turned back toward his car, leaving Maya shaken and speechless. Her hands trembled as she picked up her things. A tear rolled down her cheek. She didn't understand why she was treated that way. But what neither of them knew, and someone else had seen everything. From across the street inside a parked black car, a man was watching. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. He whispered quietly to himself, "That's my daughter." And at that very moment, the night that seemed so ordinary turned dark forever. The night felt colder after that strange encounter. Maya's hands still shook as she slowly rolled her wheelchair down the street. Her heart was beating fast. She tried to hold back her tears, but her mind kept replaying the officer's harsh words. She had done nothing wrong. She had only been going home. Yet that man had treated her like a criminal. She looked up at the streetlight. It flickered weakly, the buzzing sound echoing through the empty lane. Everything felt quiet now. Too quiet. But her peace did not last long. As she reached the next street, she heard the same car engine again. The police car. Officer Grant had turned around. His headlights shone directly at her, making her squint. Her stomach dropped. Why is he coming back? She whispered to herself. The car stopped with a loud screech. The door opened. Officer Grant stepped out again, looking more serious than before. Maya, right? He said in a low, cold voice. Maya froze. She hadn't told him her name. How did he know? He held up something, a small photo. A store owner just confirmed that one of the suspects looked like you, he said firmly. Maya's eyes widened. That's impossible. I've never even been inside that store. Grant didn't listen. He stepped closer, his heavy boots echoing on the pavement. You can explain that downtown. You'll come with me. Maya's heart pounded. Sir, please, I didn't do anything. I'm just a student. You can call my father. Grant interrupted sharply. Enough! Don't make this harder. She looked terrified now. Sir, I can't move easily. I have therapy papers in my bag. Look at them, but he wasn't listening. In his mind, she was guilty. He believed she was lying to escape punishment. He grabbed her wheelchair handles roughly and turned it toward his car. Maya cried out, and stop. You're hurting me! The wheels made a screeching noise as they dragged slightly over the uneven road. From nearby houses, curtains moved. People looked out, but no one came to help. They didn't know the truth. They thought maybe the officer was right. Maya felt humiliated. She was shaking all over. Please, she begged, you're making a mistake. Grant ignored her. We'll see about that when we check the store cameras, he said harshly. He reached for her bag again, pulling out papers and dropping them on the hood of his car. The wind blew them away, receipts, therapy bills, a small ID card. When he saw the hospital logo, he frowned. What's this? My therapy documents, Maya said softly, crying now. Please read them. For a second, he hesitated. His face showed confusion, but pride stopped him from admitting he might be wrong. Instead, he shouted, You could have faked this. People lie every day. Maya was speechless. She could only stare at him with tears running down her cheeks. She whispered, Why are you doing this to me? I didn't steal anything. I've never even hurt anyone. Grant didn't answer. He opened the police radio and called in. Possible suspect detained. Requesting backup. Maya's heart sank. Backup for what? As he turned his back to speak into the radio, Maya looked around desperately. Her phone was broken from when it fell earlier. She couldn't call her father. She felt trapped, and yet she noticed something strange. Across the road, a black car was still parked. The same one from earlier. Someone was inside, watching quietly. She couldn't see his face clearly because of the tinted glass, but she felt that whoever it was, they were watching closely. She whispered, Please, someone help me. Grant turned around again. You'll wait here, he said firmly. Don't try anything. He opened the car door, maybe to grab something, a notepad or handcuffs, she wasn't sure. Maya's breath came fast and shallow. I didn't steal, she said again, her voice breaking. I swear on my mother's life I didn't do anything. Grant's jaw tightened. Then you'll have to prove it. He walked back and stood right in front of her. The flashing blue and red lights from his car reflected on both their faces. The shadows made everything look colder, scarier. Maya's tears glistened under the lights. I can't believe this, she said softly. You don't even know me. Grant leaned closer. I don't need to. I can see what kind of person you are. That sentence cut through her like a knife. He reached for her chair again, but suddenly, a voice echoed from across the street. Officer. Grant froze. He looked up. A tall man in a suit stepped out of the shadows. The same man from the black car. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. Dangerous even. Who are you? Grant demanded. The man didn't answer. He only said, You're making a big mistake. Grant frowned. Excuse me? The man smiled slightly. You'll find out soon enough. Before Grant could speak again, the man turned and disappeared into the dark back into his car. Grant looked confused, but shook it off. He thought it was just some nosy stranger. Maya looked at the spot where the man had been standing. For a second, her heart felt a strange comfort, like she wasn't completely alone. Grant sighed, muttering, People these days. always interfering. He finally told her, "We're going to the station." But just as he said that, his radio buzzed again. A voice from the dispatch said, "Officer Grant, new information. The suspects were caught, 3 males." "Repeat, 3 males. The girl isn't involved." Grant froze. Maya looked up, tears still on her cheeks. "What did they say?" He didn't answer. He just stood there, speechless, his pride burning inside. The misunderstanding was finally clear. But the damage was already done. He looked down at her, guilt starting to show in his eyes. But before he could say anything, the man in the black car started his engine and drove away slowly, disappearing into the night. And that was the moment everything changed, because that man wasn't just any stranger. He was her father. And he was about to turn this mistake into something the whole world would talk about. The cold wind blew across the empty street. The flashing red and blue lights from the police car painted the road in strange colors. The night had gone completely silent. Only the sound of the car engine and Maya's shaky breathing filled the air. Officer Grant stood there, trying to hide his embarrassment. The radio had just cleared Maya's name, but his pride didn't let him apologize. He had accused an innocent girl. He had scared her. But instead of admitting his mistake, he grew angrier, not at her, but at himself. And he decided to take that anger out on the one person who couldn't fight back. Maya sat quietly in her wheelchair, looking at the ground. Her hands were shaking. She wanted to go home, but she was afraid to say a word. Finally, she whispered, "Sir, can I go now?" Grant's eyes snapped toward her. "You think it's that easy?" he said, his tone sharp. She looked up, confused. "But they said I'm not one of them." He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. "Maybe they made a mistake," he muttered. "Maybe you're lying to me." Maya's lips trembled. "I'm not lying." Grant's face grew darker. He had lost control of his temper. His voice got louder. "You kids think you can trick the law. You think your wheelchair makes you untouchable." Maya's eyes widened in shock. "No! I didn't." Before she could finish, he grabbed her bag again, ripping it off the back of her chair. Papers flew everywhere. Her therapy documents, her school notes, everything scattered in the wind. "Stop," she cried out. "That's my schoolwork." But Grant didn't stop. He threw the bag on the ground and kicked it. "You think I'm stupid?" he shouted. "Tell me the truth." "I already told you," she screamed, her voice cracking. "Please stop, I didn't do anything." Her tears rolled down her cheeks, but that only made him angrier. He leaned down and gripped her wheelchair handles tightly, shaking it. "You better start talking, girl," he growled. Maya's chair moved suddenly, tilting slightly to the side. Her heart jumped. "Stop! Please, you're hurting me." But he didn't listen. He was no longer thinking like an officer. He was just full of pride and rage. He pushed the chair roughly, and the front wheel hit a small crack in the road. The chair jerked violently, and Maya lost balance. She screamed as she fell sideways onto the cold pavement. Her arm hit the ground hard. Pain shot through her body. Her wheelchair rolled a few feet away and stopped near the curb. For a moment, everything went silent. The officer stood still, shocked by what he had done. Maya lay on the ground, crying softly, holding her arm. Her tears mixed with dust from the street. "Look what you made me do," Grant said coldly, trying to shift the blame. Maya could barely speak. "Please, help me get up." He didn't move. Instead, he looked around nervously, checking if anyone had seen. The street seemed empty. He thought he was alone, but he was wrong. Across the road, inside the same black car, Agent Richard was still there. His eyes were burning with anger as he recorded every second on his phone. His hands were tight on the steering wheel, but he didn't move yet. He wanted evidence, enough to destroy the man who had just hurt his daughter. Maya slowly tried to sit up, wincing from the pain. Her elbow was bleeding. She looked at her broken phone lying nearby and whispered weakly, "Dad, please come." Grant finally bent down, not to help, but to pick up her fallen wheelchair. "You should have listened," he said, his voice cold and full of pride. "You didn't listen to me," Maya whispered back, trembling. "You didn't even ask who I was." That sentence hit him, but he turned away, pretending not to care. He lifted the wheelchair upright and said, "Get back in." Maya looked at him in disbelief. "I can't move my arm," she said softly. "Then try harder," he barked. Her tears flowed again as she struggled to pull herself up using one hand. It took her several painful seconds to sit back in her chair. Her face was pale, her hair messy, and her breathing heavy. Grant looked down at her with cold eyes. "If you ever lie to an officer again, remember this night," he said in a low voice. He got into his car, slammed the door, and drove off fast, leaving her alone on the street, hurt and crying. The sound of his engine faded slowly into the distance. For a moment, there was only silence. The soft hum of a streetlight, the rustling of leaves, and Maya's quiet sobs filled the air. Then the black car's door opened. Agent Richard stepped out slowly, his face pale with anger. He walked toward Maya without saying a word. His heart was breaking, but his mind was cold and focused. He knelt beside her and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. Maya looked up, tears still falling. "Dad," she whispered. Richard nodded. "I'm here, sweetheart." Maya began to cry harder. "He hurt me. I didn't do anything wrong." Richard's jaw tightened. His voice was calm but full of rage. "I know. I saw everything." He looked at her injuries, then at the road where the police car had disappeared. His eyes turned cold. "He'll never wear that badge again," he said quietly. Maya leaned into him, trembling. "I just want to go home." He lifted her gently from the wheelchair and placed her in the car. "You will," he said softly. "But first, I'll make sure he pays for this." As the car drove away, the street fell silent again, but the story was far from over. Because that night, a father's love turned into something fierce. And for Officer Grant, the real nightmare was just beginning. The night had turned completely silent again. The streets were empty. The police car was gone. Only the sound of a soft breeze filled the air. In that darkness, the black car moved slowly down the road, its headlights dim. Inside, Agent Richard drove quietly, his eyes fixed on the road, but his mind filled with rage. His daughter, Maya, sat beside him, still trembling. Her arm hurt and her face was pale. He kept glancing at her, his precious child, and each time he looked, anger burned deeper in his heart. He had seen everything. Every word, every push, every tear, and now, the man who had done it would face the truth, but not in the way he expected. When they reached home, Richard carefully lifted Maya from the car and placed her in her wheelchair. Their house was warm and quiet, filled with family photos, pictures of better days. "Dad," Maya said softly, "please don't do anything." Richard looked at her with tired eyes. "He hurt you, Maya. You think I can forget that?" She shook her head. "I just want to feel safe again. That's all," he nodded, forcing a small smile. "You will. I promise." But deep inside, he had already made a decision. After helping her get into bed and giving her some pain medicine, he stepped into his office, a small room filled with papers, computer screens, and files. He closed the door quietly and sat down. He opened his laptop and began typing quickly. On the screen appeared the official seal of the FBI. Yes, Richard was not just a father. He was Agent Richard Cole, a senior investigator with 20 years of experience. He had worked on dangerous cases across the country, but nothing had ever hit him this hard. He replayed the video he had recorded earlier that night. On the screen, he watched the officer shouting, grabbing Maya's wheelchair, throwing her bag, then pushing her until she fell. He paused the video at the moment she hit the ground. Her cry echoed in his head. Richard clenched his fists. His eyes were wet, but his voice was cold. He whispered, "You messed with the wrong girl." The next morning, news spread quickly in Brooksville. People were talking about an incident between a police officer and a young girl. Someone had seen a video clip shared online anonymously. No one knew who had uploaded it, but Richard did. He had posted a short version of the footage, not enough to reveal Maya's identity, but enough to start questions. At the police station, Officer Grant walked in like it was a normal day. But the moment he entered, he noticed people whispering. 2 officers looked at him strangely. "What's going on?" he asked. The chief came out of his office holding a phone. "Grant, you need to see this." He pressed play. On the screen, Grant saw himself yelling at Maya, grabbing her chair and pushing her. His face went pale. "Where did this come from?" The chief's expression was cold. "That's what I'd like to know. You told me there was no incident last night." Grant stammered. "It wasn't like that, and she was a suspect." "I thought," the chief cut him off. "Save it. The department's internal affairs will handle this. Until then, you're suspended." Grant's heart sank. "Suspended?" You can't, I can, the chief said firmly. And I just did. Grant left the room angrily. His face was red with shame. He didn't know who was behind the video, but he swore he'd find out. Meanwhile, in his quiet home, Richard sat in front of his computer again. He had access to more than the average person. Using his FBI credentials, he began looking into Officer Grant's record. It didn't take long to find the truth. There were complaints, many of them, from other citizens about Grant's behavior. Harassment, threats, unnecessary force, all ignored or buried under paperwork. Richard took notes. Every case, every date, every victim. He wasn't just going to punish Grant for Maya, he was going to expose the whole pattern. But he knew he had to be careful. He couldn't reveal his connection to Maya yet. The moment people learned she was his daughter, the story would become personal and his position could be questioned. So, he continued working in silence, the watcher in the shadows. That evening, Maya sat in the living room watching TV. Her arm was wrapped in a bandage. She tried to smile, but her eyes were distant. Her father came in with 2 cups of tea. "How are you feeling?" She gave a weak smile. "Better, I think," he sat beside her. "You know, sometimes people who wear uniforms forget what that uniform means." Maya nodded. "He didn't even care that I was hurt." Richard looked away, hiding his anger. "He will care soon. I promise." She looked at him carefully. "Dad, what are you planning?" He smiled faintly. "Just doing my job." But Maya could see it, and behind his calm voice there was fire. A father's anger. That night, Richard met an old friend at a quiet diner, a journalist named Tom Harris. Tom raised an eyebrow. "You sure you want to show me this?" Richard slid a flash drive across the table. "What's on it will change this town." Tom plugged it into his laptop and watched the video. His face went blank with shock. "That's one of your officers?" "Yes," Richard said. "And that girl is—" "Someone important to me." Tom nodded slowly. "You want me to make it public?" Richard's eyes hardened. "Not yet. Let it spread quietly. Let the truth whisper before it roars." Tom leaned back, impressed. "You always had a plan, Richard." Richard took a sip of his coffee and stared out the window at the dark streets. "I'm not done yet," he said softly. "I'm just getting started." Outside, the wind picked up again. The city slept quietly, unaware that a storm was coming. One that would shake the police department, the town, and Officer Grant's entire life. And somewhere in that darkness, the watcher in the shadows smiled, knowing justice had already begun. Days passed slowly after that night. For the people of Brooksville, life looked normal again. Children went to school, people opened their shops, and cars filled the streets. But underneath that calm surface, something dark was growing. The video of Officer Grant and the disabled girl had already started spreading online. It wasn't viral yet, but it was everywhere, shared in whispers and private messages on local news pages. Nobody knew who had recorded it. Nobody knew who had shared it. But everyone who saw it felt the same thing: anger and disbelief. A police officer pushing a girl in a wheelchair? It didn't seem real. At home, Maya was still healing. Her arm was slowly getting better, but her heart still hurt. She hadn't left the house since that night. Sometimes she would stare out the window, lost in thought. Her father, Agent Richard, watched her quietly from the doorway. He saw the sadness in her eyes, and it broke him a little more each day. One evening, as he helped her with dinner, Maya said softly, "Dad, the video is everywhere. People are talking about it." Richard looked at her. "Do they know it's you?" She shook her head. "No, the video doesn't show my face clearly. Just my voice," he nodded. "That's good. Let it stay that way for now." Maya frowned. "Are you the one who uploaded it?" Richard didn't answer right away. He simply said, "The truth needed to be seen." Maya looked down at her plate. "I just don't want more trouble." Richard reached over and held her hand. "There's already been trouble, sweetheart. Now there will be justice." At the police station, Officer Grant sat alone at his desk. His suspension was temporary, but it felt like the whole world had turned against him. Whenever he walked through town, people looked at him differently. Some whispered behind his back. Some pointed. Even his fellow officers avoided him. He had told himself over and over that it wasn't his fault, that the girl was acting suspicious, that he was only doing his job. But deep down he knew the truth. He had gone too far. Still, pride kept him from admitting it. He slammed his fist on the table. "Someone's trying to ruin me," he muttered. His friend, Officer Jake, looked at him carefully. "Grant, you did this yourself." "I saw the video." "You pushed that girl," Grant snapped. "She lied to me. She tricked me." Jake shook his head. "She was a kid in a wheelchair." Those words hit Grant like a punch. He didn't reply. He just turned away, angry and ashamed. Meanwhile, Agent Richard was busy working behind the scenes. Every night after Maya fell asleep, he stayed up late, gathering information. His computer screen glowed in the dark as he went through old police records. Each document revealed something new about Officer Grant. Misconduct, ignored complaints, misuse of power. Grant had been protected for years by his supervisors, but now there was no one to hide him. Richard printed the files one by one and placed them in a folder. On the cover, he wrote only one word: justice. The next morning, Richard went to his office at the FBI Field Division. His colleagues noticed something different about him. He was quiet, focused, and serious, even more than usual. His boss, Director Miles, called him in. "Richard, you look tired." "Everything okay?" Richard smiled slightly. "Just a personal matter, sir." Miles studied him for a moment. "I heard about that incident in Brooksville. The video going around. Pretty disturbing stuff." Richard nodded. "Yes, sir. I've seen it." Miles sighed. "The Bureau might step in if the local police can't handle it. Someone needs to investigate that department." Richard's heart skipped. "If that happens, I'd like to take that assignment." Miles raised an eyebrow. "Any reason why?" Richard met his eyes. "Because justice should come from someone who still believes in it." After a pause, the director nodded. "All right, Richard. It's yours. But keep it professional. No personal involvement." Richard smiled politely. "Of course, sir." But inside, his thoughts were burning. Personal. This was deeply personal. That night, rain began to fall across Brooksville. The quiet streets shimmered under the streetlights. Maya sat near the window, watching the drops slide down the glass. Her father came and sat beside her. "It's raining hard," she said softly. He nodded. "Storms come for a reason, Maya. They clean the air." She looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" He smiled faintly. "It means sometimes things need to break before they can be fixed." Maya didn't understand his full meaning, but she could see something in his eyes. Calm, but powerful, like a wave ready to rise. Across town, Grant sat in a small bar, drinking quietly. His phone buzzed. A new email appeared, no name, no subject. Just a video clip. When he opened it, his face went pale. It was the full recording. Every second, every cruel word, every action. This wasn't the short version that was online. This was everything. At the end of the video, there was a short message. "You still think no one was watching?" Grant's hands shook. He looked around the bar nervously. "Who sent this?" he whispered. He tried to reply, but the sender's address didn't exist. He turned off his phone, but it was too late. His fear had already begun. Back at home, Richard closed his laptop. A quiet smile crossed his face. The storm hadn't started yet, but the clouds were gathering. He walked to Maya's room, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Sleep well, sweetheart. Tomorrow will be different." Then he stood by the window, looking out at the rain-soaked streets. The thunder rolled in the distance, and in that dark night, the watcher was no longer just watching. He was preparing, the calm before the storm had arrived, and the next sunrise would bring chaos. The next morning began like any other. The sun rose over Brooksville, painting the sky gold and orange. People were leaving for work, students waited for their buses, and the world looked calm. But something huge was about to happen. Something that would shake the entire town. At exactly 8 a.m., a video began to spread. Not the short clip that had quietly circled online before, but the full version. This one was longer, clearer, and louder. It showed every second of Officer Grant's actions, the anger in his voice, the cruelty in his tone the moment he pushed Maya's wheelchair. Within minutes, it was everywhere: Twitter, Facebook, news websites, even national TV picked it up. At first, people thought it was fake. No way a real officer would do that, some said. But then the local news confirmed it. The officer in the video was Officer Daniel Grant, a member of the Brooksville Police Department for 10 years. The story spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed, "Police officer attacks disabled teen." Outrage in Brooksville over viral video. Authorities silent after shocking assault footage. By noon, the town was boiling. Inside the police station, chaos ruled. Phones rang nonstop. Reporters were outside with cameras. Protesters had gathered, holding signs that read, "Justice for the girl." "End police brutality." Officer Grant sat in his office, pale and sweating. His hands trembled as he scrolled through the comments online. People were furious. They wanted him fired, arrested, punished. His chief, Captain Ross, stormed into the room. "Grant, what the hell is this?" Grant stood quickly. "Sir, that video, it's edited. It doesn't show the full story." Ross slammed his hand on the desk. "I don't care what it shows. The world saw you push a disabled girl. You've destroyed this department's reputation." Grant's voice shook. "Sir, please. You know me. I wouldn't," but Ross cut him off. "Enough. You're suspended, effective immediately. Hand in your badge and gun." Grant's heart dropped. His face went pale. "Sir, please, now." The sound of his badge hitting the desk echoed through the room. For the first time, Grant realized his life was falling apart. Across town, Maya sat quietly in her room, scrolling through her phone. She had finally seen the full video. Her hands trembled as she watched herself, the fear in her voice, the helplessness. It was like reliving a nightmare. Her father, Richard, walked in slowly. "You've seen it?" Maya nodded. "It's everywhere." Richard sat beside her. "How do you feel?" She took a deep breath. "I'm scared, Dad, but also strong. People finally know the truth." He nodded gently. "Yes, they do. And the truth is only the beginning." She looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" Richard didn't answer. Instead, he looked out the window where a crowd had gathered in the street holding signs. The world was reacting, and he knew this was just the start. By evening, the town was full of reporters. News vans parked outside the police station. Cameras flashed as officers tried to control the angry crowd. People demanded to know the girl's name, but Richard had made sure it stayed hidden. He wanted justice, not fame, not pity. Inside the FBI building, Director Miles called Richard into his office again. "Richard," he said seriously, "the video has exploded. The Bureau is assigning an investigation team to handle the Brooksville case. I want you to lead it." Richard looked calm. "I understand, sir." Miles studied him. "I'm trusting you with this. But remember, no personal involvement." Richard nodded, hiding the storm inside him. Of course. As he left the room, his steps were silent but steady. The plan he had built quietly in the dark was now unfolding perfectly. Meanwhile, Officer Grant's world was collapsing. He tried to call his lawyer, but no one wanted to defend him. He turned on the TV only to see his own face on every news channel. Neighbors avoided him. Friends blocked his number. His wife packed her bags. "I can't live with this," she said, crying. "Please, Sarah, you know me," Grant begged. "I made a mistake." "I didn't mean to hurt her." But she just shook her head. "You meant every word you said that night." When the door closed behind her, Grant sank to the floor. His pride was gone. His name was ruined. And deep down he knew someone had made sure of that. That night, rain returned to Brooksville. Lightning flashed across the sky as the crowd outside the station grew louder. Inside his car, parked across the street, Agent Richard watched silently. He could hear the chants from the protesters. "Justice! Justice for the girl!" He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just stared at the building where it had all begun. From his phone, he opened a folder. Inside were documents, recordings, and reports. Every crime Officer Grant had hidden every time the department had covered for him. He whispered to himself, "Now the truth has their attention. Next comes the truth they've been hiding." At home, Maya watched the protests on TV. She felt tears in her eyes, not of fear, but of relief. For the first time since that night, she didn't feel invisible. Her father returned home late. He looked tired but calm. "Dad," she asked, "did you start all this?" He looked at her softly. "No, Maya, I didn't start it." "The truth did," she smiled faintly. "Will it end soon?" He looked out the window at the flashing lights in the distance. "No," he said quietly. "The real storm hasn't even begun." And as the rain poured down, Brooksville wasn't the same small, quiet town anymore. It had become a battlefield between truth and lies. Power and justice, and in the center of it all stood one man, silent, patient, and ready to strike when the time was right. Agent Richard wasn't just a father anymore. He was the storm that was about to wash everything clean.